Welcome back, my woke folk. Let's talk about the national black agenda. I know all of us have different opinions about that. Black Lives Matter, NAACP, but I think this is a conversation to be had. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the national black agenda, the NBA. Not the basketball NBA, but I think my idea here is about politics. It's really about where our involvement lies in reference to our interaction, our interfacing with politics. What I feel we do as a common people is that we put all the pressure on the presidency, right? And that we ask Joe Biden, is Joe Biden, is Joe Biden take me out to dinner, right? That whole idea around the president being the sole focal point. For me, I think that completely misses the point. It completely misses the purpose of government, which is that we all need to be integrated and involved on whatever level we can. Usually that's localized state levels. So what happened to our attorney generals, our governors, our councilmen, all those other positions that actually run? We're looking more at the presidency. So this national black agenda, I have to give a credit where credit is due. That goes to Ice Cube, who presented that to actually Donald Trump and Joe Biden while they were running for office. People were pissed that one, I didn't really get this part, but they thought that, a rapper should stay in a rapper's place, whatever the fuck that means. But I think the idea is that he had the forethought to think a national black agenda where he talked about key things that African American people need as a culture in order to help us close the generational gap, to move from the levels of poverty into segments of society that allows us to play on equal fields with everyone else. So he talked about things like housing. He talked about things like reparations. He talked about things like education. He talked about things like, our involvement in politics, what that looks like from the federal level. He presented this topic to both Trump and to Joe Biden. People on social media lost their fucking mind. How are you going to present that to him? But his idea was that I don't give a shit who's in office. This is what African Americans need in order for us to move out of poverty into equal playing field. Statistics, stats. We are about 13% of the population, which is about 40 million of us out of 330 million Americans that live in America. But we are also concentrated in certain geographic areas of the country. To me, a national black agenda means it's not these isolated focal points like Black Lives Matter, NAACP, which exist in some cities, but there's no coalition. There is no cohesive message that systemically goes throughout each of the areas in order to assure that the needs of different states and African Americans in different states are met. Meaning that what happens in the South doesn't necessarily happen on the coast. What happens in the South doesn't necessarily happen in the Midwest. What happens in the South doesn't necessarily happen in the Northeast. And we have African Americans, us, that live all around these areas. So a national black agenda would really focus on that geographic area, then lobby in terms of state or federal funds or programs in order to assure those areas where blacks lived and those areas got the necessities they needed. Our disjointed efforts move the needle a little at best. We have great movements, we make more money, but we are completely disorganized nationwide. My woke family, let's talk about the NBA, right? The national black agenda, not the right. Let's talk about it.